Let's go ahead and bring in former Deputy Assistant Attorney General John Yoo. John, you're watching this breaking news with us. Huge ruling this morning, going to have worldwide impacts, and the president has said a ruling like this is really going to hurt the economy, and you've heard Shannon talking about it. How are we going to figure out how to return this money that has been brought in, hundreds of billions of dollars? Give us your initial reaction to this ruling from the Supreme Court today.
This is a major restriction on a president's ability to act during times of emergency. There were two questions. Is there an emergency at all posed by the trade deficits? And then did Congress give the president the power to impose tariffs under the IEEPA statute when it said, when Congress said the president can regulate, quote unquote, regulate economic relations with another country? Notice here in the opinion, the court does not touch the question whether in the national emergency. So that part of the president's power is still preserved. The part that's been narrowed, of course, as the others have said, is the word regulate does not include the power to impose a tariff. That doesn't mean the president can't do this in the future. There are other trade laws which explicitly delegate from Congress to the president the ability to impose tariffs. The thing that President Trump has to do, which he didn't do these tariffs, remember, he did these worldwide at once for all products.
Yep.
Essentially, court is saying you have to go back to the drawing board and you have to do it country by country. Individual countries have to be shown to be engaged in unfair trade practices or have to be shown to be a national security threat and has to be a report. And it will take President Trump roughly a year if he really wants to go forward with the tariffs. Now, I like Shannon's point a great deal. This might be a blessing in disguise because we just had GDP report numbers from last year that show the economy significantly slowed. If all the tariffs that President announced are immediately eliminated, and he has to take about a year, if he really chooses to do it again, has to take about a year to impose these tariffs again, that might actually have a positive boost on the economy, which could have a very positive effect on President Trump and Republicans by the midterm elections.
While we await any word from the White House to respond, one of the things I remember, John, when this case was first filed, it was a toy manufacturer, and he said he was a very reluctant plaintiff, but that as a business owner, he had no choice. And yes, I understand it could be very messy as it moves forward, but on the principle of the law, it does seem to make sense. But what do you think about the possibility of Congress being able to pass a law that would do what President Trump wants? So he wants to decouple from China, worthy goal. Is there a way to do this in a bipartisan fashion that could say, okay, this is constitutional, but it also helps protect American manufacturing and is in line with the foreign policy goals of the United States?
Dana, I have a lot of sympathies for the small manufacturer, the small importer, the American consumer who was in a state of uncertainty about these tariffs and we're paying higher prices for goods. But on the other hand, and as Justice Kavanaugh says in his dissent, and the majority doesn't respond to this point, I think they agree, figuring out a refund process is going to be the mother of all refund tax seasons. I mean, this is going to be a disaster. But that's up for another day. That's up to the lower courts. In terms of the future, I would actually say, Dana, and I teach trade law and international business law for my sins at Berkeley when I don't get to teach the Constitution. When I teach those, I teach the students. Actually, President Trump could turn around tomorrow and start the process of reimposing tariffs. He doesn't need new legislation from Congress. There are a bunch of federal statutes. They go by fancy terms like Super 301 and Section 232. There are a bunch of existing trade laws. In fact, President Trump can use IEEPA itself. Again, the thing the court is saying is that you have to do it in a certain way. You have to use these trade laws to be specific as to a country and what that country is doing. Is that country a national security threat? So, for example, under the IEEPA law itself, the United States has pursued not tariffs, complete embargoes, 100% cutoffs of trade with countries like Iran, Cuba, and North Korea. If President Trump wanted to cut China off entirely, as some people, I think, in his administration would love, he can use the IEEPA statute to do that. And if he wants to impose more fine-tuned tariffs of 10%, 20%, he can use these other trade laws that I've been talking about that are sitting on the books. But it takes, you have to do a study, you have to do a report, it can be challenged in court. It takes roughly about a year to be able to use those. By the way, those were the laws that President Trump used in his first term. when, if you might remember, he launched a trade war with China. He imposed tariffs on other countries.